If you don't teach your kids how money really works, someone else will. And chances are it won't be in their best interest. As one of my kids is getting ready to graduate high school, I've been thinking a lot about what actually matters. Not just making money, but building your best life. Today, we're talking about the three financial lessons I believe every parent should teach their kids before they step into the real world. Stay tuned, you're not going to want to miss this.
Well, great to have you on another episode of Legacy Beyond Wealth. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you're not, please come over to YouTube. Check us out there as well. We have a good conversation today because, as parents, there's a lot of challenges in today's world. And there's always other outside factors influencing their way of thinking and their beliefs. And, money is a big part of building a future, right? And these are discussions that you haven't had as much about in the past. Maybe your parents didn't do that as much with you. It's a little bit more, common now to talk about it. But, whether you realize it or not, your kids are already learning about money, whether it be from you or from someone else, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many influences out there, whether it be friends, social media, people that they look up to in the community that may be the best examples or not the best examples. And so, having that open communication with your kids is so critical. And, I've been thinking a lot about this as my oldest is getting ready to graduate. And so, it's kind of coming home to roost a little bit. You're thinking, okay, did we prepare him and all that he needs to be able to be successful financially? And that's where we came up with these three items that we've made sure that we've had the opportunity to teach our kids and hopefully be of help to others out there.
Yeah, you're a very thoughtful person, Rob. So I'm curious and very interested to kind of hear what you've learned from your experience as a parent of younger children. I know I've got a lot to do ahead of me, so any advice and stuff that I can get along the way is good. Because look, in this day and age too, there are a lot of messages. And a lot of those messages out there are, hey, look more successful, upgrade, spend, spend, spend. So let's dive into the three things that you've kind of picked up on. What's the first lesson where you would start and talk to kids about money?
Yeah, I think the first one is don't optimize for early status. And some people are, what do you mean by that? And I just say there's a lot of pressure out there to look successful right away. Nice cars, lifestyle, all of it. But when you look back, it's really not about the car that you drove right now that people are going to remember. I remember going to my 5-year class reunion and some kids showing up and they wanted to look successful after 5 years of high school. And so some had driven some pretty amazing vehicles that all of us were like, man, they must be successful. Now I go to the reunions and realize that that was more of a facade than it really was being successful, and how much more they could have been ahead by putting money towards other things out there versus trying to make your status look like you are successful. And, that's why when my kids turned 16, they drove an older vehicle and it wasn't the nicest looking one in the parking lot. I'm grateful for that because they did put a few dings and dents and a few new bumpers on during the course of learning to be able to drive. But, I looked at some of their friends and they were driving really nice vehicles. And I just kept thinking, I'm glad that my kids are learning maybe a little bit about what disappointment looks like early on. I don't know, but not having to have the best things, but being able to put some money aside for nicer things later on down the road, or planning for later on down the road, just versus what status looks like today.
So when you talk about this lesson, Robin, and not optimizing for early status, that it's really just talking about, the trade-off of spending versus investing early on, right?
Yeah, I think so. And, I looked to when my son got old enough that we said, okay, we're going to teach you about social media. You can open a social media account. And I said, be very careful. All of this is algorithms driven to be able to get you to make purchases because they make money off of advertising. And so be careful. And pretty soon we started to notice some packages coming in the mail. And that gave me an opportunity to talk with him a little bit more about that, hey, social media in and of itself isn't horrible or bad or evil, but it's about how we allow it to influence us in our spending habits. And, we could either put that money towards this, what I would call a frivolous item that's going to break probably pretty quick because it's so cheaply made that came off of TikTok or any of those other social medias, versus putting it away solid for you financially for a future. And those are decisions that are going to have to be made over time. So yeah, I think that status and being able to make sure that you're being proactive in creating that life you really want versus just being reactive, that is important.
Yeah, it feels good to be driving the nice car early in life, or looking the part, right? We had a conversation earlier about rich versus wealthy. It's easy to want to look the part of being rich, right? But building towards wealth is so much more valuable and rewarding later on in life. So a good lesson one to begin with, Rob. All right, lesson two. What you should be teaching your children?
Yeah, I mean that kind of goes into it, right? We touched on it just a little bit here. Is maybe if you're not so focused on the status and buying things that necessarily aren't important or necessary right off the bat, taking that money instead and investing it for yourself and learning the power of what investing can do and compound interest can do for you. And I'm grateful that we did that early on with our kids. So we had opened up investment accounts for them early on, talked to them a little bit about what that looks like. They were all still in grade school when we started that for them. And that has meant that my oldest, he lived through the COVID years with an investment account, saw the world shutting down around him and the fear of the market starting to crash and going down 30% in March of 2020, to saying, hey, do we sell? Do we get out? What do we do? How do we stay financially disciplined to our plan? And this was longer term money. And so we could be able to ride that out. And then you fast forward to 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine and the 9% inflation, the markets dropped 20%. And then also talking about the good years when the market is up. And they've been able to experience that roller coaster ride with investments and understand the importance of saving, having some money put away for a rainy day, but also investing for the long term that could really help provide that financial freedom where you're not going to have to work the rest of your life, that at some point that money is going to be working for you.
Are you ready to unlock the freedom to live your best life? Schedule your no-cost 60-minute discovery meeting with our team today. During this session, we'll take the time to understand your family's story and financial dreams. Together, we'll craft a personalized roadmap designed to help you achieve your goals. Let's explore how we can unlock the freedom for you and your family to thrive. Just click the link in the description of today's show to get started.
Yeah, I think that's so important to learn about investing early on. I know something I wish I would have been a little bit more aware of and just spend a little more time in earlier on in my life is putting more money into that investing aspect and understanding that money's working to build you more time. And to, as you always say, buy back more of your time later on. You don't think about it as much early on, but you do later. So instilling that early is super important. So I love that lesson there, Rob.
I love to take the investment calculator. If you just Google investment calculator, you'll find a bunch. And talking with my kids and showing them, hey, we're starting out small by only putting in X number of dollars every month. But we do that for 30 or 40 years. Look what that money can grow to. And it's mind boggling to be able to see that happen. And I feel like a lot of kids don't understand the power that can bring. So just having that discussion with them to help them see that will help them be empowered to be like, okay, I'm not just not spending money today, like we talked about with lesson one, but lesson two being I'm putting it away because this is what it can grow to and mean for me in the future.
Yeah, I love that one. All right, that takes us to our final lesson here, Rob. I know everybody wants to focus on income, but your message is a little bit different here, right?
Yeah, ownership is greater than income. So when we think about it, we want to start owning assets that actually work for you and starting to look at those at a young age. So whether it's opening up a candy stand to teach my kids a little bit about entrepreneurship and what can happen there, to now my daughter makes macarons and sells them during the holidays each year to be able to make some extra money. And I was impressed. I was driving home the other day and I got myself a new dealer. He's about third grade and he goes out and finds all the golf balls that get lost on the golf course and he sells them on the corner, $1 a ball. I can't think of a better way for me to be able to spend my money because I'm a horrible golfer. And it's a good win-win relationship. But I love that this young man is learning so much about business and hard work and work ethic. And these are important things for kids to be able to have, and understanding that ownership in something is really important.
Yeah, just about with everything else, it's so much easier to learn these lessons. If you can establish it early, man, it's just so much easier to help put you in that mindset to be successful over the long term. So again, these are three great lessons. Rob, how well have your kids done it kind of picking these up?
I think some better than others because every kid's a little bit different and unique. And I'm hoping that they're at least understanding that these are important. And sometimes kids have to learn through the school of hard knocks. And giving them the opportunity to learn early on some of these things, I'd rather have them make mistakes in their investing account when the account is small versus when it's really big. I'd rather have them make mistakes in their candy store or selling macarons or golf balls while they're young than in their careers when they're older. The stakes are even higher. And I'd say this is the motivation that really drives me is I want them to have freedom. I don't want to have them feel like they're trapped by money, that they're forced into decisions they don't want to make because of other decisions they made earlier on in life. And so if we can help prepare them that way to be able to have that desire for that financial freedom, then I feel like these lessons start to fall into course and start to become more applicable to them, and they listen a little bit better when we put it into that kind of context of financial freedom.
Yeah, I think, we oftentimes as young people think that we're kind of behind because we're not making as much money, but what you have is time, right? That's what's on your side. It can really set you up over the course of 20, 30 years, as you mentioned, if you're doing the right things early on. So establishing these lessons early in life, man, can have such a huge impact. And as a parent, I think these are 3 lessons that we can all kind of take away and try to apply towards our kids. So I think it's so important to be intentional, as you always talk about, Rob, being intentional with these decisions. And again, this is just another area that it's so important. It's kind of like the foundation of being successful, right?
Yeah, just don't let the world teach your kids about money by default. Be intentional because the lessons they learn will really shape the rest of their life and what they can be able to accomplish. And as a parent, I want nothing. I don't want a ceiling anywhere for my kid. I want to give them the most resources they can to be as successful as they can and see where they really go. And so that intentionality is really important that you mentioned there, Ben.
All right, very good. Well, some things to think about. I know I'll take these lessons away and start stacking them away for when my kids get a little bit older and they can understand things a little bit more. I've already been pretty good about teaching about money a little bit, but applying some of these bigger lessons, I think, as they get older is going to be very valuable. So appreciate you sharing as always, Rob. And thank you for watching and listening to Legacy Beyond Wealth. We appreciate you. And also, if you haven't subscribed, please do that as well. We thank you for that support. But we'll talk to you again soon on another video, another episode. So take care.